Hey, are we live?
Thank you very much for inviting me to chat with you.
And thank you so much for having me on.
Here we go. Okay.
So, big hypothetical. This comes from, back in my days in the garage when I had a little startup down in Sydney. And I remember we were courting a traction. And we were all there sitting in a room. And this one lady, in all seriousness, looked at us and said, okay, so what happens, right? What happens when the Earth is hit by an asteroid? How will your system deal with that? And I was more along the lines of, well, if an asteroid hits a planet, you should be worrying about your animals, not necessarily your website. But hey, you do you, right? But talk to me a little bit about your extreme scenarios. How do you guys manage them?
I think, I mean, to be fair, there are many possible reasons for downtimes, and
Sure.
being hit by an asteroid is probably an extreme example, but I acknowledge that's a possibility. However, it's a remote possibility. But I understand the question, and based on experience, if you have a catastrophic event that happens, be it at a small scale or a massive scale, like the example that you gave, I think it's very important to think about the fact that and this is based on experience, the availability and the resiliency, because you're in this kind of situation, you're sort of thinking, okay, what was the best option that I have to manage an event of that nature. And I think it's very, very proven by now that the availability and the resiliency and the ability to recover from downtime caused by any event is significantly superior when you're running on the cloud. So the decision that you make on AWS by default is already the first answer that I give. Be on the cloud, be somewhere where you have a platform that is managed for you, that has, as we mentioned, 100 plus availability zones that are geographically distant from each other, whereby if a particular event happens, let's say, hopefully it will never happen, but let's say it happens in Abu Dhabi, then you still have an availability zone in a region in Riyadh, or if it happens in Singapore, there's an availability region in Sydney or Melbourne. So, and things are quite, I mean, the availability zones within the region itself are quite geographically distant from each other by design, to ensure that any event that happened, be it a natural disaster or be it a man-made attack of any kind, or be it a technical issue, is somehow mitigated by the fact that you have a similar infrastructure available to you as a customer that's sitting in a different part of the globe. So your ability to recover is very, very high. This would be my answer, Andy. And I think the other thing is we have in the course of working with our customers and working with Embed, one of the things that we recommend is always having a failover approach.
Yeah.
Failover is a solution that answers the questions of what happens if that particular data center or specific availability zone within the data center where I'm running my technology is, for whatever reason, disabled, right?
Yeah.
For whatever reason, right? And that failover strategy is part of the strategy that we help you define to cater for events of potential downtime or failure. The good news is this is completely transparent to your customer,
Yes.
also transparent to your own customers, because that failover, that load balancing or that scaling, auto scaling, failover, all of these various technical terms that I'm using refer to that ability to recover in a transparent fashion, which means with very limited visibility to that shift from one data center to another by your customers, which is a phenomenal thing that is almost impossible to replicate without a massive cash outlay.
Absolutely.
If you're not running with cloud, right? So it's a great thing that you've done, and I think I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was really solid. I mean, I think that's an important thing to highlight, right? So availability zones for the guys on the other side of this video, you've got the concept of a data center, and within a data center, you have what's called availability zones. The concept is that if everything in the availability zone is duplicated, meaning there's two connections in to one data zone, to one availability zone, and data connections into another availability zone. Meaning, if one goes down, then you've still got a connection to the other availability zone. So I can speak to this. Like I remember, this was actually quite early on in the piece of AWS being in Sydney, and Sydney had a torrential flooding. I think this was, gosh, probably about 15 years ago now, maybe a little less. But that flooding actually took out the availability zone that I was running again in my little startup. And within half an hour, we were back up and running on different availability zones. So I've been there. We've seen the need for dramatic changes and dramatic, occurrences, which just wipe out operations.
Yeah.
In doing that, in understanding that, it became very apparent though that half an hour of downtime acceptable within SLA. We're all cool. However, with working with Toolkit, it became apparent that half an hour of downtime during a peak period was probably something that we want to avoid at all costs.
Yeah.
Similarly, back in the pirate days of the internet, the one time that you could almost guarantee that infrastructure would go down would be a peak period. I remember, staying up all night Christmas night, staying up New Year's, because we were just sitting there watching server temperatures, server resources, all that kind of stuff go up and down. So, you really have to plan around all these things.